From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Millions of voters across South Africa are voting in an election which many say will be a tough test for the ruling African National Congress. Long queues have built up outside polling stations since 6 a.m. local time when voting officially opened. More than 26 million voters are expected to cast their votes at the 22,000 polling stations spread across the country. Officials have not announced when the final results, will be announced. And the leaders of the different political parties contesting the election joined other voters on the queues to cast their votes. Mmusi Maimane, the main opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, casted his vote at a polling station in Soweto on the outskirts of Johannesburg. Speaking shortly after voting, Maimane said he's confident that his party will do well in the elections as he had done enough to convince South Africans to vote for it.
I'm confident about Gauteng, the numbers are turning out, and I'm calling on the people of South Africa. Fear says to us, let's stick with what we know. Hope says, let's bring change. Let's bring a new chapter in this province, in this economic hub. So one day we can deliver jobs. It's the confidence I'm calling for South Africans. Let's not be fearful now. Our country is asking for more of us, and therefore I'm calling upon all of them to turn out to vote today and bring change.
The leader of the opposition Economic Freedom Fighters, Julius Malema, casted his vote in his hometown, Seshego, north of the capital, Pretoria. Malema arrived at the polling station shortly after 10 a.m. local time, transforming into a sea of red of scores as local supporters turned up to accompany him. Economic Freedom Fighters has grown at a rapid rate since its formation in 2014 after Malema's expulsion from the ruling party. The president and ANC candidate Cyril Ramaphosa casted his vote in the township of Soweto after 11 a.m. local time. Ramaphosa was accompanied by his wife, Dr. Sepo Mosepe, and other senior party officials. Speaking to journalists after voting, Ramaphosa appealed to South Africans to vote for the ANC because, according to him, the party was willing to correct what he called past mistakes. Our correspondent Matuba Malaji is in Johannesburg with the latest details on this election.
After months of intensified campaigns, the polling stations around the country have been open for the 2019 general elections, and we expect to see 26 million registered voters go to the polls and make their mark. 48 political parties are contesting this election. This is the biggest number we've seen in any election since the dawn of democracy in South Africa. Now, post-election, whoever is elected as the president of this country will be facing many challenges. During the campaign the build-up of this election, we've seen many service delivery protests. So people have been protesting because they are not satisfied with basic services that have been delivered by the different municipalities around the country. Most of the municipalities, of course, are under the governance of the African National Congress. So they are under pressure to win the election and fix these problems. But whoever is elected president post these elections faces another big issue, which is unemployment. And most of the people who are unemployed in South African society are the young people. And the young people have said during the campaign when we interviewed them that they will voice their concerns in the ballot box today to tell the government how they feel about how they've been running the country for the past 25 years. And we also know that the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition party, and the Economic Freedom Fighter, the far-left firebrand party that's come into politics only in 2013, have also entered the political space, making promises and trying to woo voters away from the African National Congress, promising to make effective changes that will give them land and that will give them jobs and that will give them basic services that they have not been receiving under the ANC governance. So this is a very contentious election that will actually everybody is waiting to see who will be making more gains, because it's one of the most unpredictable elections by far. Many political analysts saying this, the ANC will stay in power but with less votes, while other opposition parties will be making gains and taking voters away from the African National Congress. But all of that remains to be seen until the counting of ballots later this evening. And we know that the service delivery protests that had been going on during the campaigns have also compromised the opening of some of the polling stations. But we expect to see the counting of votes later this evening. It's back to you, studio.
Thank you, Matuba. That was Matuba Matlaji from South Africa. And more than 26 million people have been registered to vote. But local surveys say 6 million young people are not registered. 55% of the voters are women and 45% are men. A record 48 political parties will contest this year's election. The party that wins most seats in parliament will select the president, who will be sworn in on May 25th. And this is expected to be a defining election for South Africa, since it marks 25 years after Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress came into power. Jobs, land ownership, the lack of public services, crime and race are the main concerns of the electorate. So let's take a closer look at the three candidates who have been leading the polls. Let's start with Cyril Ramaphosa, the African National Congress. He was a key trade union leader during apartheid and the protege of Nelson Mandela, who led talks to end the white minority rule and helped write the new constitution. After a career in business, in 2014, he returned to politics to become Jacob Zuma's vice president. He took over as president of South Africa in 2018. Ramaphosa has promised to create 270,000 jobs each year to curb unemployment and to accelerate land reform. Now we go to Mmusi Maimane. He's the leader of the Democratic Alliance. He joined the party in 2009 and was fast-tracked through its ranks to take control in 2015. Before getting into politics, Maimane ran his own management consultancy and lectured at a business school. His main challenge has been to convince many black middle-class voters that his party is not a white party. The Maimane says he aims to build one South Africa and eliminate corruption as well. The other candidate is the 38-year-old Julius Malema. He's a former ANC youth leader who launched the Economic Freedom Fighters, or EFF, the party back in 2013. He was kicked out of the ruling party after coming into conflict with the leadership and has thrived as a rebel. Malema is known as the voice of the young and unemployed. He demands the seizure of land from whites without compensation. He's a strong advocate for nationalization of the mines and banks. So to talk more about these elections, we are joined by Angelo Fick, a South African journalist and political analyst. Thank you for joining us, Angelo.
Yes, good afternoon.
So 25 years have passed since the end of apartheid and the elections that came after that. Why are these elections such a big challenge for the ANC?
So a quarter of a century, as pointed out, the African National Congress in the last 8 years, prior to 2018, had an administration led by Jacob Zuma, which has now been revealed to have maladministered the state, have several senior officials in the party and in government implicated in allegations of corruption, maladministration, and some very, very illegal activities around, the abuse of state power. This has come out of various parliamentary inquiries and the Zondo Commission into State Capture, which is the major commission into investigation into how it is that a particular family and a particular set of businesses had so much control over state resources for so long that took the South African economy into the dire straits that it's currently in.
So it seems that all these characteristics and things that have happened in South African politics have led to the rise of the economic freedom fighters, and they are said to take a significant number of votes from the ANC. Why is this so?
So partly, as you pointed out in your introduction of Julius Malema, that he was the charismatic leader of the African National Congress's Youth League, was disciplined for all sorts of violations of party code, was kicked out and established his rival party. People assumed in 2014 that he would simply disappear from the political landscape. The phrase was, "It is cold outside the ANC." And so the 6% that the EFF polled in 2014 surprised many people both inside the ANC as well as across the country. Over the last 5 years, the EFF in Parliament has really been quite vocal in their opposition to the way in which business is being done by the governing party, the African National Congress. And many assume that they will grow their support in this election into the double digits support figure in terms of possibly 10% or more. However, we must not forget that the official opposition remains the Democratic Alliance, and they were the fastest growing party up to 2014. And questions remain about whether this electoral performance will continue to grow for them or whether they will in fact shrink, because many people say their appeal is not as strong as the appeal of the EFF. But the question I think many people have is how much of the young people who are underrepresented as voters will turn out to vote? Because turnout, I think, will determine whether or not any of these parties gain or lose support.
And what are your thoughts about the increase, in this case, of this radical left parties in South Africa? It hasn't been a situation before in this part of Africa. And what could you say could be this explanation for this recent growth?
So we have had, really big problems with employment figures. South Africa has a 54% youth unemployment rate. And, even in the economically good years between 2000 and 2004 under President Thabo Mbeki, there was economic growth, but it was jobless growth. And so year on year, unemployment has really increased spectacularly. There are real crises in education. So while South Africa now educates more people than it did 25 years ago, the quality of post-apartheid education has actually been really, really shoddy. So even graduates coming out of universities, people who leave school with the school leaving examination, are unable to find jobs in the economy because they're underskilled. And not just in terms of, capitalist skills, but just in terms of even state job skills, administrative skills. And so Cyril Ramaphosa and the African National Congress have suggested that under his leadership since 2018, the governing party will take a new turn. It will, root out corruption. It will return the ship of state to the stable direction that they want to have, the party and the Republic of South Africa going. And many people are not quite as convinced will happen because there are some internal divisions in the governing party. And so what we're seeing is out of this, sort of complicated scene, the opportunity to vote for a party like the Economic Freedom Fighters, which is a home for many people who are disaffected with the two dominant parties in South Africa, the EFF's rise we have seen over the last 4 years.
So in the event that the ANC doesn't get a majority in cities like Johannesburg and Pretoria, do you see any chance of a coalition government between the ANC and the EFF?
So that is the big question, particularly in Gauteng, because it is the economic heart of the country. It accounts for 16% of the country's GDP and is one of the largest economies on the continent. We saw in the 2016 municipal elections an attempt at coalition in 3 cities. The coalitions have held in the capital, Pretoria, and in the economic hub, Gauteng's big city, Johannesburg. But it's been held very tenuously and not particularly successfully in terms of delivery, precisely because the ANC remains such a powerful opposition in both those cities. Provincial government of Gauteng will be a big challenge for any coalition relationship. The ANC and the EFF are likely to make a slightly more successful coalition should they choose to go in that direction. But that may harm the EFF standing in the National Assembly for the next election if people see them as having gone into a relationship with the very people that they are foundationally opposed to. Their relationship with the Democratic Alliance in municipal governance was not a relationship of coalition, was a relationship of partnership foundation to punish the ANC, and that hasn't worked out very well for them either. And so coalition, given how ideologically different the big 3 parties in South Africa are, would be very, very difficult at provincial governmental level.
Thank you very much, Angelo, for your time, for explaining to us what's going to happen in South Africa as well.
Thank you so much.
That was Angelo Fick, a political analyst from South Africa. We have more stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. Prosecutors in Peru have requested 20 years in prison for former President Ollanta Humala in connection to the Odebrecht corruption case. Humala, who was president from 2011 to 2016, is accused of money laundering to fund his electoral campaign. His wife, Nadine Heredia, is also facing a 26-year jail sentence for the same crime. Former presidents Alejandro Toledo, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, and late Alan Garcia have also been named in this case. 7 people were killed and 17 were wounded in a prison shooting in Guatemala. The National Civil Police said the dead were prisoners at the rehabilitation model farm. Officials said the shooting stemmed from an altercation. The wounded prisoners were transported to medical facilities. The director of the National Museum in Rio de Janeiro has asked for more financial support from the Brazilian government to save art that was damaged in September's fire. Alexander Kellner made the call for funds during a presentation of 27 pieces from an Egyptian collection. The previous government gave around $2 million to preserve the building after the tragedy, but the museum has not received any other public funds since April. Investigators said the fire started in an air conditioner unit and spread rapidly due to the lack of equipment to fight it.
We are having difficulties in the daily running of our institution. Professors don't have places to work. We don't have space to store pieces that we rescue. We can't just leave them on the ground.
100 years after Eva Perón was born, Argentinians remember her by hosting various events across the country. In the capital, Buenos Aires, women supporting the Peronist movement commemorate the centenary with an artistic performance.
The birthday centenary of Peronist spiritual leader Eva Evita Perón did not go unnoticed in Argentina. The Comando Evita group organized an event in the capital in which 100 women of different ages and origins represented Eva in different stages of her life.
We want to recognize Eva in the present as much as we do for what she did in the past. What will she look like today? Where will she be? What modern-day woman represents her now? We all feel part of this movement, and we believe that Cristina Fernández de Kirchner emulates Eva better than anyone. So we tried to create an artistic historical timeline. Eva Perón was the first in line, followed by the Plaza de Mayo mothers, and ending with Cristina Fernández de Kirchner.
Various aspects of Eva were represented at the artistic performance. The Evita who gets involved with labor unions, the Montonera, the actress, and the one who loves fashion.
I am dressed as the glamorous Eva who loves fashion. I wanted to participate in the performance because who wouldn't want to be the leader of the working class? Especially now where we need to stand for social issues and the working class struggle and look at them from a feminist perspective in order to avoid making the same mistakes.
I am dressed as the cover of Eva's book entitled The Reason of My Life. In the book, she talked about her past and wrote about her legacy.
Hundreds of women marched from the Obelisco Monument in Buenos Aires to the Minister of Social Development's building, under the slogans, "Peronism is with Cristina" and "Avoid Macrismo," the latter of which is an Argentine political movement against industrialist President Mauricio Macri.
This event serves as a new and unusual way to manifest and recognize Eva as our first great feminist. We also wore green scarves to recognize women's right to have an abortion.
She is a unique figure in Argentina history. She is very important to us women, for Peronists, especially in this electoral year.
Demonstrators say the event was geared toward regaining some semblance of Evita by offering support and sending love to Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, current leader of the Peronist feminist movement.
We wanted to unite to make Evita a part of the event, so in the coming elections, our comrade Cristina can become president again.
The event ended with a feminist version of the Peronist march in front of the Social Development Ministry. Artists, feminists, Peronists, and Kirchnerist activists were all present.
Now to Cuba. The annual LGBTQ parade, widely seen as a sign of progress for gay rights, has been cancelled. The National Center for Sex Education said the public health minister cancelled the event due to international and regional issues affecting the island. The rest of the activities for the Forum Against Homophobia and Transphobia have not been changed. Activists have since criticized the government's short explanation for the parade's suspension. Bolivians have celebrated the Tinku Festival, or Encounter, in the Quechua language. Participants fight each other in a celebration that takes place in the Potosi region. The origins of the ritual are unclear, although some reports dated back to pre-Inca times. The fights can carry on throughout the afternoons with only temporary truces.
The Tinku on May 3rd is a custom from our ancestors, from our great-grandparents. Today, we come into the town to do this sport. That's what I call it. We are all hungry to fight, but sometimes the police don't let us fight until the end, and they use tear gas. It's not like in the past.
Although Mexico stands among the top 20 oil-producing nations in the world, gas prices remain high. According to the government, prices will start coming down within 3 years, once the country's 6 refineries are fixed and a new one is built.
Mexico is the oil-rich country that is most dependent on gasoline imports. A gallon of gas costs around $4, as gas prices did not stop increasing during the last administration.
They were always raising gas prices. From long before, every January, with every new president, we'd have higher gas prices.
Years ago, Mexico was self-sufficient in matters of gasoline. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador established a new stance from his very first days in office.
I vote that once the new refinery is built and we restore the other 6, the price of gasoline will come down.
As part of his strategy, every Monday during a news conference, the president name-checks service stations that have the highest gas prices.
Salieron 125 gasolineras de todo México. Hubo inmovilizaciones en 50 inmovilizaciones de bombas.
But why is this happening? The president explains.
Pemex sells fuel under our price control. These stations have clear instructions from the Treasury to not increase the price of gas, of diesel, of natural gas and electricity. But there are cases where they abuse their power.
In the meantime, the government has started to reduce imports, with reports stating that in March the purchase of foreign fuel dropped by 12%.
We're taking one last break. Don't go away.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the new source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. A bomb blast in Pakistan has killed at least 8 people outside a major Sufi Muslim shrine in the city of Lahore. The explosion targeted a police security vehicle. 5 of the victims were policemen, with many others injured, feared. In 2010, thousands were killed by 2 suicide bombings at the shrine, considered the oldest in South Asia. No group has claimed responsibility for this attack that comes as the country marks the holy month of Ramadan. Journalists in Sudan are calling on the transitional government to implement new policies and laws to protect press freedom. A group of journalists say state media is governed by ideologies which do not support the revolution, affecting their ability to be impartial when reporting stories. They made the comment as they held discussions on censorship and media coverage in Sudan.
We had previous censorship of all kinds, including the presence of security officers daily in the headquarters of the newspapers, to read the materials and correct them, and to say whether this article is to be published or not. These instructions were issued by different means, either by telephone, verbally, or by messages.
Meanwhile, the ruling military council says it agrees with proposals made by protest leaders on the creation of an interim government. They feel Sharia and local norms should guide legislation. Discussions with the opposition are ongoing, but calling early elections within 6 months would be an option if they cannot reach an agreement.
The document we received has omitted the sources of legislation. Our view is that Islamic Sharia and the local norms and traditions of the Republic of Sudan should be in the sources of legislation.
Iran has withdrawn from key commitments under the 2015 international nuclear deal. The announcement was made by President Hassan Rouhani a year after the agreement was abandoned by the United States. The deal sought to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions in return for sanctions relief. However, since the U.S. quit, Iran has been hit with renewed sanctions. Rouhani announced that the capital would keep enriched uranium stocks and not sell them abroad. He has also threatened to resume production of higher enriched uranium in 2 months. More than 150,000 people have been displaced in Syria due to violence in the past week, according to the United Nations. Fighting between government and opposition forces left several civilians dead, with many injured on Tuesday. The increase in strikes and shellings in the northwestern region has destroyed 12 hospitals and 10 schools. The UN has since called for an urgent de-escalation of the situation in the region.
We have inspected the places where the shelling took place, and we've saved around 10 injured, and there was 1 killed today. We have tried as much as possible to remove the rubble and to clear the areas. Of course, the shelling is targeting the rescue teams and the members of the civil defense when they are reaching the location of the shelling.
With that, we end our news brief, but you can read more on these stories by checking our website, telestorenglish.net. There we have it. And for our viewers in Africa, you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. You can join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.